Hello everyone. In this video we're going to continue using air quality dataset to learn about another very useful feature of Pandas. We're going to learn about group by. Group by is a very powerful, useful data analytic Pandas function. If you have worked with any database querying programs and have done any queries, you know what group by is. Basically the same thing, but now it is at your fingertip to use it on any data set, as long as you have imported pandas and you have Python. So let's see a couple of examples of group by and see how it can be beneficial as far as data analytics. So let's get to it. So as I said, we're gonna still work with the air quality data. So the first thing I'm doing, I'm importing pandas, and I am also repeating all of the data cleaning parts that we did in one of the previous videos. So if you haven't watched that video, go back, watch the pandas data cleaning video, and you will see all of what we did here, and you can follow along there. But anyway, let's continue. Basically, as the name suggests, group by is a function that group your data set by a specific thing, and that specific thing is your column. So you can group by your data set based on any columns, and based on the unique values of that column, your data set is going to be group by. But you need to pay attention every time you do group by. Most of the time you also accompany it with aggregate function such as size. So if you do that, it will group by the data set and then gives you the size of each group. But for the purpose of practicing, let's just remove this and one time just group by without the aggregate function. See what happens. The group by has happened here, but there is nothing to show. So every time you do a group by, it is followed by an aggregate function. So that's most of the time how you're gonna go about grouping by on your data frames. A very useful function that we also saw when we were learning about pandas is describe. When you say group by and then describe based on the group by, what's gonna happen is going to describe each group for you. It means that it's gonna give you the mean, standard deviation, minimum, maximum, the 25%, 75%, and all of that jazz that describe gives about the whole data frame. Now it's going to give about each group. So let's see an example. So let's do a group by on the units. We have 3 types of units. It tells us how many, like the value counts, the mean, the standard deviation, and all of that by just saying describe. There are a number of aggregate functions that you can be using with group by or on data frame. You could be using count, you could be using sum, mean, MAD, which is mean absolute deviation, median, minimum, maximum, mode, standard deviation, variance, and SEM, which is unbiased standard error of the mean. All of these are at your fingertip. By just like typing them, you can do those calculations. So for example, I do group by based on the species and I count the number of values, which is basically checking how many of these have actual values instead of missing values. Or I could do the same thing and want to get the mean from that, and it's just going to do the calculations for me. A very even more powerful functionality of group by is you can group by your data frame based on more than one column. So here I want to group by based on more than one column. I'm grouping by species and also date, and since it's going to be a long list, I'm changing the preference to be able to see 1000 rows. So once I run this, it might take a minute because there are a lot of combination of species and date. And basically we have 365 dates and 6 species. So it's going to be like a fairly large data frames gonna be outputted here. So this is a data frame we see, and all of those calculations for each day have done for us. And we can just scroll down and we can see it start with NO 365 rows, and then NO2, and so on and so forth. So the challenge here I have for you is I want you to write a code that output the average and the standard deviation of all the air pollution measurements, NO, NO2, NOx, PM10, PM2.5 for every month. So I want for every month. So before you do this, you may have to extract, create a column from the date, or extract the information of month and create a column named month before you can do that. Not only do I want you to, do that with the group by, but I also want you to, after you're done with the group by, I want you also to do it with the way we did in the, a couple of videos before, without group by. Do you remember we would create a placeholder, and then we would, create nested loops and go through the nested loops and then do a Boolean mask and then do some calculations. I also want you to do that as well. And then once you did both of these two ways, I want you to compare them and see which one is faster. Stop the video here and give this a try before continue to watch. So the guidance I have is, you have to split the daytime, reading daytime, so you have date and time. You have to do a similar thing on this daytime to create date, time, to create year, month, and day. And then extract that month one, and then do a group by based on month and species, and then do the calculations. This is going to be what the output is going to look like. So you have the month, you have the species, and the runtime for this is going to be 0.31. The second thing you need to do is to do the same calculations, but this time use what we did before. Basically, creating a placeholder, doing a nested loop, doing Boolean masking, and then doing some calculation. As I have given you the skeleton of the code here. So I'm asking you to create a placeholder, so you know how to do this, and then the Boolean, the nested loop, which I've already put for you, and then you do a Boolean mask, and based on your Boolean mask, you fill out all of these values, and then your placeholder is ready, which is the answer df, and then you will calculate the time that starts from the beginning, and it's 1.3. We can see that the group by is much faster, Boolean masking and like placeholder. If you haven't already finished doing this once for yourself, stop the video and try to do all of these parts together, and then continue watching as I will be showing the answer. So as I said, it's very similar. I am splitting date time based on this time the slash, because before the date time and time, before the date and time were separated by space, but now year, month, and day are separated by slash. So I have to use a slash here. So I use a slash and I say expand through, and each one of them is going to be day, month, and year. And I join that to the main data frame. So now I can say df group by species, and since the data frame also has a month, I can use that here to describe the value. And I run that, and since I don't want, so I need to import the time, module time. And since I don't want the min max 25%, 50%, 75% account, I get rid of them by dropping them. And the same thing, similar thing would be able to happen by creating a placeholder. So I have like indexes, I create the indices by knowing that they're going to be from 0 to 5 species multiplied by 12 months, so which is going to be 60. And then these are going to be my columns: species, month, mean, and standard deviation. And I create a Boolean mask, and I create Boolean mask based on the df species and month, and these are my unique month and species that comes from there. And I will put x and y on species and month because their value is going to be the same for all of them. So it's going to be no and o and o and o, and then the month are going to be what comes from those values from the iterations. And then I do the calculations for mean and the standard deviation, and I plug them in where they're supposed to go. And then I report how much time it takes. So once I run this, it's 0.07, and this is the same values I get. So let's check this, the first one. That they are the same values. But we saw that doing with group by is significantly faster. So basically what I'm saying here, in the couple of videos back that we did a lot of looping and like placeholder, then Boolean masking, all of them were not necessary. The reason we did those things, I wanted you to practice using Boolean masking, and Boolean masking still remains a very relevant programming technique that I wanted you to become proficient at. But for the examples that we saw in those videos, actually doing group by would have been a better idea and easier and faster.